Welcome back to the deep dive. We take one idea, gather up the research, and, well, give you the shortcut. Today, we're looking at something called Dunbar's number. It's this idea of a cognitive limit, a ceiling that might shape everything from ancient tribes to your Facebook feed.
It's definitely one of the most talked about concepts in sociology and anthropology right now. And it's compelling because it suggests a hard limit. The idea from British anthropologist Robin Dunbar is that there's a maximum number of people we can actually maintain stable social relationships with.
Okay, but stable relationship needs a bit of unpacking, doesn't it? We're not just talking about nodding acquaintances.
No, not at all. It means really knowing who someone is, their background, and crucially, how they connect to everyone else in your social group.
Right, that web of connections, knowing who's friends with whom, who dislikes whom.
Exactly. And that complexity, managing all those links. A knows B, B knows C, A knows how B feels about C. It just explodes as the group gets bigger. That takes serious mental effort.
So Dunbar put a number on that limit.
He did.
Yeah.
Based on his initial work, the range was quite wide, actually, maybe 100 to 250. But the number everyone latched onto, the one you always hear, is 150.
And I love the informal definition he gave. It makes it so much clearer.
It's a bar test.
Yeah, the number of people you wouldn't feel embarrassed about joining uninvited for a drink if you happen to bump into them in a bar.
It perfectly captures that level of, comfortable familiarity. You know them well enough.
So our mission today,
Mm-hmm.
let's dig into where this number came from. The evolutionary background is pretty surprising. Then see how it's used today in business and online.
And importantly, we also need to look at the pushback, because there's some pretty strong criticism challenging whether this fixed limit is, well, actually real.
Okay, let's start at the beginning. This whole thing didn't start with humans, did it? It started with primates.
That's right. It comes from primatology. Researchers noticed that primates, well, they keep their social groups together through really intensive contact, mostly social grooming.
Like picking nits and stuff.
Pretty much, yeah, it builds bonds. And they saw this really clear pattern across dozens of species. The bigger the group, generally, the bigger the neocortex volume.
A neocortex, that's the thinking part of the brain.
Exactly. Higher order functions. So it looked like brain size was directly limiting the number of social bonds it could handle.
Okay, so you plot brain size against group size. For monkeys and apes, you get a line.
You get a correlation, a mathematical relationship. Dunbar took that correlation, found across 38 different non-human primate types, and basically just plugged in the average human brain size.
It outpopped.
Out popped 148, which, gets rounded up nicely to 150. He published this back in 92.
A nice clean number.
Well, clean-ish. We have to remember, even in that first calculation, the error margin was huge. The 95% confidence interval, statistically speaking, went from about 100 all the way up to 230.
Wow, okay. That's a pretty wide range for a supposed hard limit.
It is, but the 150 was the average prediction, and it just seemed to resonate, especially when Dunbar started looking for historical examples.
Right, because the number seemed to show up in real human groups throughout history, didn't it?
It did. He looked at anthropology, history, and 150 kept appearing as a kind of natural group size, especially for groups that needed strong cohesion without, say, modern police forces or complex laws.
Like what kind of groups?
Well, estimates for the size of Neolithic farming villages often land around 150.
Okay.
And there's documented evidence from Hutterite communities, these are religious groups in North America. When their settlements grew to about 150 people, they tended to split voluntarily.
To maintain social harmony, presumably.
Yeah.
Less friction.
Seems like it. They wanted to keep that close-knit community feel. And then there's military history.
Ah, yes. Intense cooperation needed there.
Absolutely. The basic unit size in professional armies, think Roman legions or modern company sizes since maybe the 16th century, often stabilizes around 150 soldiers.
So the idea is that's the maximum size where people can operate based on personal trust and knowing each other rather than just rules and hierarchy.
That's the interpretation, yeah. They can rely on each other in chaos because they know each other.
Okay, so if 150 is this recurring number, the big question is why? What's the actual mechanism? Why not 500? What stops us?
It boils down to time. The sheer time cost of maintaining those relationships.
Maintaining them how?
Well, remember the primates and grooming. Dunbar did a calculation based on that. If humans only had physical grooming, like primates, to maintain bonds in a group of 150.
Uh-oh, I feel a big number coming.
Yeah. He estimated we'd need to spend 42% of our total time just grooming each other.
42%. That's almost half the day.
I know. Imagine that. How would you ever get anything else done? Foraging, hunting, building things, raising kids.
Yeah.
It's just not feasible. Your energy budget is completely blown.
So survival itself would be impossible if we relied on physical grooming for a group that large.
Pretty much, especially for early humans facing intense environmental pressures. This is where it gets really interesting, evolutionarily speaking. Dunbar proposed that this pressure, the need to manage larger, more advantageous groups without spending all day grooming, drove the evolution of something revolutionary.
Language.
He called it cheap grooming.
Huh. I like that. Cheap grooming.
It's a fantastic concept, right? Instead of physically grooming one person at a time, you can use language.
You can sit around the campfire and, well, gossip.
Exactly. Gossip about who's trustworthy, who's cheating, who's a good hunter, who's slacking off. You're transmitting vital social information, maintaining alliances, monitoring reputation.
But you can do it with multiple people at once. And while doing other things, like making tools or gathering food.
Precisely. Language lets you groom many people simultaneously and efficiently. It allowed our ancestors to maintain cohesive groups up to that 150 limit, gaining the survival benefits of larger numbers without the crippling time cost of physical grooming. It freed up maybe half the day for productive work.
It's like an evolutionary cheat code for social bonding.
That's a great way to put it. And this idea, this 150 limit, it hasn't stayed in anthropology textbooks. It's jumped into the modern world.
Right, into business management and organizational theory. I've definitely heard it mentioned there.
Oh, absolutely. Companies have explicitly used it. Flight Centre, the Australian travel agency, is a classic example.
What do they do?
They actually restructured their entire organization based on it. They created units called families, then villages, and finally tribes, and the tribes were capped at 150 people. The idea was to keep that small group trust and communication alive.
That's quite literal. And there's the Gore-Tex example too, right, from the tipping point.
W.L. Gore and Associates, yeah. They figured out through trial and error decades ago that something went wrong when their work sites got bigger than about 150 employees.
What went wrong?
The social dynamics changed. People became less likely to spontaneously help each other or fix problems outside their specific job description. The sort of informal, all-in-it-together culture started to break down.
So their solution was?
Radically simple. Keep building small, cap them at 150 employees. They even limited parking spaces to 150 sometimes. If a site got full, they'd just build another one nearby.
Wow. Designing infrastructure around a cognitive limit.
Even governments have tried it. The Swedish tax agency, believe it or not, used Dunbar's research back in 2007 when they were reorganizing. They set a maximum of 150 employees per office.
Because they figured beyond that, you rely more on formal rules than on people just knowing and trusting each other.
That seems to be the logic, yes. Formal bureaucracy starts to replace informal collaboration.
Okay, so it pops up in history, military, business. What about the digital age? Does Dunbar's number mean anything when we have thousands of friends online?
That's a common question, and yeah, it seems surprisingly relevant. The idea is that while you can list thousands of contacts, the number of people you have active, meaningful relationships with is still constrained by that cognitive limit.
So the actual interaction, not just the connection count.
Exactly. There was a study on XING, which is like a European LinkedIn. They found something really interesting.
What was that?
The users who reported the most success in getting job offers through the network were those with, on average, about 157 contacts.
157, that's basically right on the number again.
Right on the button. It suggests there's an optimal point.
Why would it peak there? Why not just have more contacts for more opportunities?
The thinking is, beyond that point, the cognitive load gets too high. You spend too much time sifting through updates from weaker ties, filtering noise. The network actually becomes less useful because you can't effectively manage it.
The signal gets lost in the noise.
Precisely. Early attempts at things like massive online gaming guilds often ran into this too. Once they got much beyond 150 active members, they needed formal rules, moderators, enforcement, all the stuff the 150 limit theoretically helps avoid.
Okay, the case seems pretty strong then. Primates, history, military, business, even online networks seem to point towards this roughly 150 limit where informal trust breaks down.
Yeah.
But hang on. If this is such a fundamental cognitive limit shaped by evolution, why aren't we all still living in tight little villages of 150? It feels like something's missing. Modern society is obviously way bigger.
It does feel intuitively wrong in that sense, yeah. And that's where the academic debate really heats up. The number 150 is neat, it's appealing, but it's definitely not universally accepted. There's significant pushback.
Okay, so let's get into the criticisms. What's the main counter-argument?
Well, for a start, the number itself, 1 on 50, isn't the only estimate out there. Another group of anthropologists, H. Russell Bernard, Peter Kilworth, and their colleagues, they did field studies in the U.S. trying different ways to actually count people's real social ties.
And they found a different number?
A significantly different number. Their average estimate was about 290 connections. The median was 231.
Whoa, 290. That's almost double Dunbar's 150.
It's a huge difference. It suggests our capacity might be much larger, or at least measured differently.
But the criticism goes beyond just finding a different number, right? It hits at the core method, the brain size calculation.
It absolutely does. This is maybe the deeper critique. When other scientists tried to replicate Dunbar's original analysis, the one linking primate brain size to group size, but used newer, larger datasets and more advanced statistical methods.
What happened? Did they get it on 50 again?
No, the results were, well, kind of a mess. They were highly unstable. Depending on the exact data or the specific statistical model they used, the predicted human group size jumped all over the place.
Like how far off?
Sometimes the average prediction was around 69, sometimes 109. One model even suggested as low as 16.
16, that's tiny.
Right. And critically, the confidence intervals, that range of uncertainty, were enormous. In some analyses, the 95% confidence interval stretched from like 4 people up to 520 people.
Okay, wait. If the possible range is 4 to 520, then predicting 150 specifically, that doesn't sound very useful.
That's exactly the criticism. If the method gives you such a massive range of possibilities, it's not really predicting anything useful about a specific human limit. The prediction mechanism itself seems shaky under scrutiny.
So the statistical foundation might be weaker than it first appeared. What about the basic premise? Is brain size even the main driver?
That's another major line of attack. Many researchers argue that ecology and diet might be much better explanations for group size in primates than just brain size.
How so?
Well, think about what primates eat. Some species eat things like leaves, which are everywhere but not very nutritious. They can afford to hang out in really big groups because food isn't scarce, even if their brains aren't particularly large.
So it's about the environment and food availability dictating the group size, not necessarily the brain's processing power limiting it.
Exactly. Brain size might just be correlated or a secondary factor. Resource economics could be the primary driver.
That definitely shifts the perspective. And there are other arguments, too, about early humans.
Yeah, there's the Paleolithic constraint argument. People like Philip Lieberman have pointed out that early human hunter-gatherer bands before agriculture were likely limited by food availability and how much they had to move around. Their groups might have been much smaller, maybe only 30 to 50 people typically. If that was the norm for a long stretch of our evolution, then a limit of 150 couldn't have been the main thing evolution was selecting for back then.
Okay. So the historical context might not fit perfectly either.
And you don't even need to stick to mammals to question the brain size link. The whole theory leans heavily on the neocortex, a mammal thing. But look at social insects.
Like ants or bees.
Or paper wasps. Some paper wasp species have societies around 80 individuals. They have hierarchies. Individuals recognize each other's status. It's a complex social structure.
But their brains are minuscule compared to ours.
Exponentially smaller. It shows that complex social management can evolve through different pathways. It's not just about having a big neocortex. Other solutions are possible.
Okay, so summing this up for the listener, where does this leave us? We've got this really neat, appealing idea of 150 as our social limit. It seems to pop up in history and business.
Right. It has this intuitive appeal and some practical application as a rule of thumb for organizations.
But on the other hand, the original math seems questionable when replicated. Other studies find different numbers, like 230 or 290. And maybe diet and environment matter more than brain size anyway. Plus, tiny-brained insects have complex societies.
Exactly. The picture is much more complicated than just one magic number.
So what's the big takeaway then? Is Dunbar's number useful at all?
I think the general principle remains valuable. Maybe the exact number isn't 150. Maybe it varies more. Maybe it's closer to 290. But the core insight that there is a scaling challenge in human groups, that group size profoundly affects cohesion, that seems valid. Beyond a certain threshold, whether it's 150 or 250, you simply need more formal structures to keep things running. Laws, management hierarchies, HR departments, they become necessary because informal, trust-based relationships can't carry the load anymore.
That knowledge itself is useful, right? For anyone running a team, a company, even an online community, knowing there's a point where things will change socially.
Absolutely. It helps you anticipate those changes. But let me leave you with one final thought, something to mull over.
Okay.
We talk about this limit, maybe 150, maybe more. But where do we actually spend our social energy? Dunbar's own detailed research looked into this too.
And what did it show? Are we spreading our effort evenly across those 150 people?
Not even close. The data shows we're intensely focused inward. We spend about 2/3 of our total available social time budget on a very, very small inner circle.
2/3. On how many people?
Get this. About 40% of our social time goes to just 5 people, your absolute core. And another 20% goes to the next 10 closest people.
Wow. So 60% of our social effort is for only 15 people.
That's right. The 150, or whatever the true number is, represents the edge of your social world, the maximum you can mentally handle. But the real action, the intense investment of your time and emotion, happens in that tiny circle right at the center.
So the challenge isn't just the limit, it's how heavily we prioritize within that limit. Something to think about next time you're scrolling through hundreds of online friends. Where's your 60% really going?
Exactly. Who are your 15